This is the first time that the Board of Selectmen have met over Zoom. So we're not going to be taking public comment at this meeting. We will in future meetings as we work out all the kinks. We'll certainly will resume to public comment. So please bear with us while we get this situation under control in terms of being able to use Zoom. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting and just first say that we're in uncharted waters. This has been a difficult time for everyone across the board without exception. And I think people have done a terrific job. The Board of Selectmen, all 5 of us have worked diligently along with Mitch, who has done a superb job of keeping the town updated and safe. And public safety all across the board. I've been very impressed by the response by the town, from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as well, and the federal government. We're moving forward. I don't think this is going to peak until another couple of weeks maybe, but we're certainly acting under abundance of caution in Rockport, and people are really adhering to our suggestions for social distancing. And again, I just want to thank everyone for your efforts. And we have a number of things that we need to get going on. That's why we're meeting today. And I'm sure they're going to have another meeting early next week as well. And that will obviously be posted. So let's go. We need to talk about on letter B, the postponement of the May 12th, 2020 election. Mitch, do you want to talk a little bit about that prior to?
Certainly. So the board has been authorized by special legislation to vote to postpone the May 12th annual election. At this point, as everybody knows, we're certainly not in a position to be able to hold that election. At this point, town meeting is pushed off. The election, certainly same type of thing. I would recommend that you postpone it. You do not need to set the date this evening. That's something that can come down the road. I know that I spoke with the town clerk earlier this week, and I know for her, one of the questions that certainly is coming up, she's preparing to print the ballots and is curious about whether the board wants the override listed on the ballot now, or whether just proceed ahead with the individuals on it. The budget you voted certainly includes the override. So at the moment, barring you saying something different, it would be included, but you don't have to decide that tonight either. I just need to make you aware of that, because it will be a decision that you'll have to make at some point in the very near future. Tonight, though, simply is having you postpone the election. Okay,
do you need a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, let me, Ruth, go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we will postpone the annual spring election to a date to be determined.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second moved and second. Any further discussion?
Sure, I'll make a comment. Don, I'm not sure if we can hear you because I saw your mouth move, but I didn't hear what you said.
Unmute now. How's
There
that?
you go.
Any better?
Now you're good.
There you
Yeah,
go.
we can
All
hear.
right, good. You probably like me better that way anyway. Though,
So, just a quick comment. I've been attending the school committee meetings on their Zoom meetings. They've had 2 since this all started. And as school committee liaison, I'm happy to have a conversation with Rob and the chair of the school committee. But I think tonight we should just vote to postpone the election.
Makes sense.
Great.
Any other further comments, concerns?
Nope.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I got to do a roll call vote.
Oh.
Ms. Donnelly,
Aye.
Ms. Wilkinson,
Aye.
Ms. George,
Aye.
and Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
And Mr. Murphy votes aye. So the motion passes 5-0. Very good. Approval of an amendment to amend Cape Ann Veterans District intermunicipal agreement to include Hamilton. Mitch, do you want to give us a little update about this? This is something that came up recently.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, yes. so that we can move forward and allow these folks to potentially join. Hamilton was part of the Eastern Essex Veterans District, which was tied in with Essex, Ipswich, Wenham, and a few other municipalities. They felt that they weren't necessarily getting their money's worth. They have about the same number of active veterans as we do, and they were paying $40,000 a year, or thereabouts. Don't quote me on the number, but that was the number that was shared recently, approximately 1,000. We pay $15,000, so they'd be the same rate as us joining our district. As everybody knows, Adam Kukuru is fantastic, our district director. He has another employee assigned to him, and it'll have no negative bearing on us having Hamilton join the district.
That's wonderful that we can offer that up.
Yeah.
Is there any limit to how many can join, or can this just keep growing and growing and kind of become, how does this work?
So everybody has to be contiguous. So it's limited certainly to contiguous communities, but there's not really any kind of limit on the size. As the size increases, the state has different staffing requirements that are triggered. So the larger the district, the more full-time equivalent staff applied to it. We have 2 full-time equivalents in the district, which meets the current need. It can be as big as the state will allow, which there are some districts that are, 10, 12 plus towns.
So as people come on, the contiguous aspect of it could keep growing as more towns come on.
Yep.
Okay. All right, good.
I think anytime we can work collaboratively with other communities, it saves money, and you're not reinventing the wheel, so this is good.
Absolutely.
And if it benefits our veterans, then that's the biggest concern of all.
True.
And Mr. Chair, I have a suggested motion for whoever would like to make it, if you're ready for that.
I'll make it.
Please.
I'll make it.
Great.
I move that the board approve the amended Cape Ann Veterans District intermunicipal agreement to include the town of Hamilton and authorize the town administrator to execute said agreement on the board's behalf.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none. Roll call vote. Selectman Donnelly,
Aye.
Selectman Wilkinson,
Aye.
Selectman George,
Aye.
Selectman Campbell,
Aye.
and Selectman Murphy votes aye. The motion passes 5-0. Great. That's great news. Okay, let's go to the TA report and turn it over to Mitch Vieira. Mitch?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few updates for the board. Certainly, we are in the midst of quarantine and social distancing, all phrases that weren't part of our regular vernacular until maybe a month ago. We continue as a town internally, operations-wise, to learn something new about it every day. We are in the process of transitioning some of our functions from the marathon, so to speak. We're trying to gear up for the longer haul based on the new decision by the governor to keep things closed through May 4th. So we're gearing up for that. As the board is aware, we have staff that are on a rotating basis in town offices. So people are rotating through so that we don't have a full house in the building at the same time to maintain safe social distancing standards. Employees who are able on their off time to work from home are doing so. And we continue to evaluate that as we go along. The Board of Health last night discussed some social distancing concerns. One of the first things they did was relating to the restaurants and the establishments. And for those that wish to open up or stay open, they need to ensure that they have the ability to properly socially distance themselves internally, the employees, and that they must allow the employees to wear masks if they choose to. The health agent brought up an interesting point at the meeting that she encountered this in the other municipality she works for. A manager refused to allow an employee to wear a mask to work, which on its face is appropriate, but That won't happen here. The Board of Health did take a vote to require food establishments to allow these to do that. The other item that the Board of Health discussed last night that affects the board is social distancing in our crowds downtown. So whenever the weather's been nice, there's been a pretty big surge in the downtown area. And we'll only see more as the weather gets nicer. So the board discussed very specifically bearskin neck and voted to recommend to the selectmen that if social distancing is not possible, that the board consider all actions up to and including the closure of bearskin. So took that vote from them last night, and I had a meeting this morning via Zoom with the incident command team that we have in place as part of our emergency response structure. And we had a discussion on that, and it led to the bigger conversation about if we do one area, we need to look at others to make sure that we're addressing things comprehensively. So the incident command team is myself, the police chief, the director of emergency services, and the finance director. We left our meeting today, and we'll all be meeting again tomorrow via Zoom to come together and discuss a list of areas that may need either some restrictions or some closures, and to come up with what may work best as a recommendation to bring back to this board for a vote. We don't want to go ahead and certainly just close everything or just leave everything open. We're working on figuring out how we handle folks who are coming in from out of town that aren't simply going to get in the car and leave if they can't go up bearskin neck. Bathrooms, of course, are closed. There's really no place for them to go. So we're trying to come up with our plan internally on how we address really the visitors coming into the community. We're also, as a part of that, having our engagement, our engagement specialist work on some messaging that goes out that basically says, don't forget us, but we're not open yet. We're not ready yet. We're not ready to welcome the crowds. Whereas normally right now we're partnering with North of Boston Visitors Bureau and doing ad buys and trying to draw folks in pre-Memorial Day. We're taking the opposite approach this year. So all of that being said, within the next day or so, probably by tomorrow afternoon, we'll have a comprehensive recommendation for the board to consider. It'll address bearskin neck, and it'll address any other areas that we've flagged as problematic or that could be problematic as the weather gets nicer, taking into account certainly things like could some areas become residents only versus full closure? Could some areas have time limits attached to them? The Board of Health discussed some of this as well with bearskin neck. Could we say some areas are open until 10 a.m. each day so that folks could still get out there and enjoy? We're working our way through that. We didn't want to rush it this afternoon and have something that wasn't well thought out for you to consider based on the Board of Health's vote last night.
Great.
So I will have something to distribute to the board for you to think about tomorrow afternoon. And it would be worth it to consider an emergency meeting at the beginning of next week for you to take some actions pursuant to your local state of emergency as far as potential closures or restrictions in certain areas. So
Mitch, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. No, I'm good.
Yes, I understand that we're heading down this direction. Do you know of any, I got a couple questions and then I'll open it up, of course, to the board. Are there any municipalities that have closed down sections of their town or city because of concerns, i.e. like a bearskin neck or someplace like that? And do you know of any situations like that have occurred?
There are some, certainly. And I know Manchester, for example, they closed all parks, all beaches last week.
Wow.
Each town is taking certainly an approach that's appropriate for their particular circumstance. It's really pretty much runs the gamut of things. I have another call at noon actually tomorrow with the regional town administrators and town managers to talk about kind of the next round of what people are doing and what they're seeing and what they're contemplating. So I'll be able to factor that into the big discussion about potential closures or restrictions on this end.
And the reason we can do this is because we declared a state of emergency. I just want to make sure we're on legal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Pursuant to the Civil Defense Act of 1950, it authorizes the governor and the political subdivisions of the Commonwealth to take emergency action. So the selectman is authorized to declare a local state of emergency. You've done that, as you're all aware, on the 16th, the board took that vote. The Board of Health followed a week later with a public health emergency. So we have our foundation in place to be
Perfect. Yep. Okay, good.
that kind of action.
Are there any other steps that need to be taken to make sure that we're on solid footing, to make sure that any funding that would come our way is realized?
So the significant step with the funding was declaring the state of emergency. And now it's down to tracking. So the finance director and the emergency services director working together to track all of the expenses that are related to COVID. At the moment, a significant amount of the expenses is related to cleaning supplies and disinfectants. We expect at some point, though, that will shift over to some labor expenses as well. At the moment, we're really looking at, cleaning supplies and technology. We've had to do certainly some larger technology purchases faster than we had anticipated to accommodate work from home options for general government employees and distance learning for the school department.
So as it sits now, we're in a good spot right now, is what you're saying. There's nothing else we need to do.
As far as on the reimbursement end, it's just collecting what we're doing, which we're tracking now.
Mitch, I have a question
Yes.
for Paul. So do you think, is there any possibility that Michelle or someone could check Essex? And if Essex, Rockport, and Manchester could work together, maybe we could put a signboard up on 128 just after Gordon College, alerting everyone coming this way that the towns are pretty much shut down for the time being. I mean, that's way ahead, so that, you know, it shows that we're trying to keep people out, because people are going to start driving this way.
Mm-hmm.
Can you keep them out, though?
Well, quick question. I don't think it's worth it. I don't know if we want to get into the details before we hear Mitch's recommendations, but is it worth it, Mitch, for us to have, I know it's a Friday night, but I think we're all probably going to be sitting at home. Is it worth it for us to have an emergency call tomorrow night in case there are things we want to do before the weekend? Because I'm concerned that if we have another, you know, if Saturday or Sunday are nice, that they're
supposed to be beautiful.
Like, yeah. And I'd rather, if you make some, you know, the way I think about it is it's still early enough in April that we may be able to try some things without total restriction. So I'm kind of hoping that Mitch comes to us with like a step before kind of closing everything down. The only reason I think we can do that is because it's still April. If it were Memorial Day, I don't think we would have much choice. So I just worry about losing a weekend.
Do a progressive.
Sure. Yeah. If everything is ready to go for tomorrow night, certainly. If not, maybe Saturday morning.
Okay.
I'll certainly aim for tomorrow night.
Okay. I mean, does that work for everyone? I don't want to lose the weekend.
No, and I just checked the weather earlier today, and it's supposed to be a beautiful weekend. And if we can get something in place, I think that would help. Yeah,
I'd rather get something in place than on Monday be like, oh my God, it was a disaster. You know, we had a situation like Good Harbor had last weekend, and then we're forced to just shut everything completely.
If the mitigating step, if the mitigating steps are taken in advance and we can do whatever we can, I mean, it's going to be like anything else. When water hits the dam, it still wants to go somewhere. So when people come into town, if we stop them at Bearskin Neck, they're still going to go. They're going to go up Main Street. They're going to get onto the back beach, their front beach. You know, so it's a matter of. I don't know if incremental is the right approach, but I agree with Sarah that we should wait and see what happens with the recommendations that come out of this. But I also think that hard decisions have to be made, and let's just be prepared to make them at a moment's notice.
I just had a question, Mitch. Do you know are there any businesses open on Bearskin Neck, like helmets or Any of the business?
To my knowledge,
food
everybody
business?
is closed. There's some
Closed.
folks who are doing, who live there, and some of the shops are doing online sales.
Mhm.
At this point, honestly, under the governor's order, I do not believe there's anybody labeled as essential that's open. on
The
the-
Yeah.
only thing that might be is that the technology store.
Oh, yeah.
They
So I
had
don't know that he,
well, he had a sign last week when I drove that was like call, but it may be the type of thing where you could, you drive down and they bring out like a curbside type thing.
yeah,
And that's only, I don't know if he's actually open. It looked like he was last week. And I did just see that Brothers Brew is closing starting tomorrow.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that.
Yep. so at
That's
this point,
gonna
that
hurt.
really leaves, that really
Well,
leaves pretty much House of Pizza that's open at this point.
Yeah.
Closed, Brothers is closed, Blue
Yeah.
Lobster, Porter.
Yeah, I mean, they all have to
Okay.
they're all at this point looking out for their employees, which is good, a good thing. So yeah, I think next step is just wait for your recommendations.
Yeah, so we'll have them assembled, if all goes to plan, early afternoon.
Okay.
So as soon as I get them, we can logistically turn that around. I will get that out to the board and we can go from there.
Great.
While we're talking about this, any news about Halibut Point?
So Halibut Point, I spoke with someone from DCR today, and they indicated that as part of the governor's beach restrictions, that
Yep.
all on-street parking within the parks is closed.
Oh, good.
Excuse me, but I don't know, when I looked at the actual list of locations as part of the executive order, it didn't include Halibut. But I did do another follow-up with him, and at this point, he's still indicating that on-street parking is closed in Halibut Point, and the environmental police will be enforcing that.
Good. Okay. Good to know.
Yep.
So they're also trying to figure out if they need to do some type of better distancing within within the parking area itself.
Yeah, it's just a disaster. I mean, I've driven by a few
Yeah.
times, and even after you spoke to them, I drove in but didn't take a right into the parking lot just because that's all I do is drive around and look at things. And it was still there were just way too many people. The only possible way it could be open is if they allowed 10 cars or what, you know what I mean? But they're just not. It is what it is.
Yeah, so one of the items under consideration is looking at any parking restrictions on Granite Street itself. If they're going to limit parking within the park, we may need to look at, and we're evaluating Granite Street parking as well.
Yeah, because that's a disaster. I know a lot of people that live over there. My sister lives over there, and it's like people literally treat the street as if it's a parking lot.
Yeah,
I mean, we know that
absolutely.
issue from the
Yeah.
lobster pool issues, but
Oh, yes, the lobster pool.
yeah, but it's the same strip and it's, it's dangerous and it's not. So
Yeah.
maybe that's something that the police would have to cone or put barriers or something in advance.
Yep.
Mitch, do you feel confident in that we have enough patrolmen and patrol people to enforce some of these things? Are we biting off too much? I mean, I know we have to do all this, but I'm just a little concerned about the enforcement of this.
Sure. So to the extent that we can do any type of closure or restriction without posting an actual body there, that's the goal. There are some areas certainly we'll need more. At the moment, knock on wood, we're doing pretty good with staffing. That could change. I don't want to jinx us. So far, so good. I'm comfortable with what's there.
As far as the police are concerned, Mitch, do they have enough equipment, safety, personal protection equipment to keep them safe, as well as our emergency services in town, fire, ambulance, everybody? Are we good in that department?
So for the moment, yes. Has actually asked me this last week and asking how long, if we had kind of a prediction. And it's very hard to predict how long it'll last. It depends on the frequency of calls and what type of call it is. As you know, the police department is not going in first to many of the medical calls now in an attempt to try to stay out and avoid exposure, which in turn saves some of the PPE. But we are doing good at the moment. We just got some additional materials in. I did send a directive out to the department heads that any material or PPE gear that may be tucked away, boxes of gloves that people may have accumulated over the years, et cetera, need to be turned in to emergency services so that we can add them to our overall inventory. I think we're doing pretty well at the moment. There's nothing that is in panic mode as far as equipment.
Good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I did
oh,
hear in the governor's press conference today that some of the materials that were delivered from China are going to MEMA, and then some of them will be distributed to cities and towns. So maybe we'll get something from that shipment.
Yes, and Mark is in contact with MEMA through the Web EOC portal where we do the requests. And we got some of this last batch from, so he does have some additional requests in. Hopefully we do get something out of that.
Great.
What a wonderful gesture by Mr. Kraft.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, that was pretty special.
And maybe we could look at, maybe the chief could look at seeing if any of the parking meter people could be utilized for, extra assistance of downtown areas if we needed to block anything off or anything.
Sure, I will pass that along.
Mitch, I have a question back to the Board of Health. So are there any other new restaurants that have shut down because they couldn't meet any social distancing besides now Brothers Brew? Anything else on Main Street that had any, is everything closed down, or are there places still open? Blue Lobster, Fish Shack, Feather and Wedge.
Those are all closed.
No, Feather and Wedge is doing takeout, but it's takeout delivered to your car.
So they've
Tuesday through Friday.
started because they've been closed.
They're open today. They're open tonight
They're
again.
open
They put out a new
tonight?
menu. But it was
Okay.
the webs, just because I'm on their email list, and the website says call and order over the phone. You pull up in front, call, and they bring it out, put it in your car.
Okay, then that was solved. I think, Ruth, that came up as a question last night.
Yeah, I remember that.
Particular location. So then I guess Feather and Wedge is open on the weekend, and it's just House of Pizza. Nothing else.
Mitch, oh, sorry. Mitch, would you mind, just because there have been so many questions about it, would you mind talking about tracing,
Sure.
contact tracing, and what the public health nurses are doing?
Certainly. So contact tracing is the term for the process that the state has developed and requires us to use whenever there is some type of exposure or positive test related to any type of infectious disease. In this particular case, it's 99.9% for COVID-19 cases. Cases come in through an online system called Maven. Our public health nurse, we have Teresa as our lead nurse, and Chassie as our secondary public health nurse. And we're in the process of building a pool of other individuals to assist them. Ruth is going to be one of those people, and we'll be reaching out to the school nurses to see if they're interested as well. So it's basically they have an interview and a follow-up with each person that comes through their system as a positive. And they walk back in a very detailed fashion every interaction that they've had. Where did they go, come into contact with? And much of it comes down to what the definition of contact is from the state. If you were closer than 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes with someone, that's considered a contact. There's a lot of confusion about, hey, I walked through an office of somebody who's now out sick. That's not contact. Simply walking through or, using the copy machine for a few minutes with somebody, that's not contact. So they track each of those down, and if, in their opinion, as health professionals, if they determine that it meets that criteria, or if there is any kind of concern, or if you happen to be displaying symptoms when you're around those people, they'll reach out to them to do a follow-up and say, okay, you've been named as a contact from somebody. Do you have any symptoms? Are there any issues going on your end? And they'll ask them in many cases to consider self-quarantining.
Mhm.
That process is prescribed by the Commonwealth. We follow what
Okay.
they tell us to do with that.
Yeah, I think it's important that people know that because I've gotten comments like,
Yeah.
"Oh, the health nurse must be too busy." Like, and it's all, isn't it? It's the same in every community. It's
Yeah.
all state
Yeah.
organized, right?
State driven.
Yeah.
It is. And so, and they're in contact with the hospitals as appropriate. That's where they get a lot of their follow-up information from. That was a topic at Board of Health last night. Barbara McCarthy from Beverly Hospital was as well and shared some of the information from the hospitals. So it's a very, very detailed process. And
Mhm.
what it's down to is if you don't get a call, you aren't considered a contact.
Mhm. Are we still at 7 cases?
We're currently at 7.
7.
Oh, I thought it was 8.
There's a little internal discussion going on about whether you count deceased individuals.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
So the town will not be reporting out deceased death counts. At the moment, we're officially still 7.
Perfect. Anything else, Mitch?
That's it on the
Regarding-
operations piece. On the finance piece, we've instituted a spending freeze in place now because, as you'd expect, our hotels and meals tax, basically, those went off a cliff on everything. Fortunately, we had collected the vast majority of our estimates for meals already. We were only about 6,000 short of our meals estimate so far, which is great, which means that that's not going to have a major impact. Hotels, certainly we're monitoring that, but just as a level of extra precaution, we have put a freeze in place. So any spending that's not considered necessary or urgent is not to take place. And if anybody has any questions on what's necessary or urgent, they've been instructed to contact the finance director, and she triages each case with the department head to figure out if they can go ahead with that purchase or not. That also applies to any kind of non-emergency, non-public safety overtime, office supplies, anything like that. So we're comfortable at the moment with where we are with FY20. The finance director, putting her other hat on as treasurer collector, is always being very cognizant of our cash flow. As you know, the second half of real estate and personal property taxes went out, and I think those are boxes. Some arrived today, some will be arriving this weekend. So those have gone out, and those will certainly continue to be an important part of our cash flow. So those are out, and at this point, I know there's been a lot of discussion in some other forums about the town's ability to waive statutory interest that may come for any kind of late payment. We don't currently have the legal ability to do that. There is a legislation pending in Boston right now that would allow towns to waive the statutory interest, but it's out of our hands. We're not able to do anything if there is a late payment on that. We're obligated by law to apply a late fee.
Mitch, didn't you tell me that I think it's 80% of people's mortgage payments are 80% of the property tax bills are paid through people's mortgage companies?
The escrows are pretty much 80% of what we take in. Very small portion of people at the counter.
Yeah, that's great.
Expecting that,
John wants to talk to.
barring any kind of major issue that affects
Thank you.
the mortgage companies, we're anticipating we'll receive those escrow payments.
Great.
I mean, the thing is that you watch the news, there are a lot of other municipalities, whoever, that are doing this and that are waiving these fees. So it's just the right thing to do. We just have to figure out the mechanism to do it through state resources or federal if need be.
So we need to pass the legislation and tell us it's okay, and then we can have the board say we want you to do it.
Good.
Perfect. Anything else on FY 2021 budget updates?
So
Are there-
on 20, sorry, just one other thing on 21. At this point, we've been pretty much done with the budget, but now we are revisiting internally some of our revenue estimates to make sure they're realistic, knowing that we're not going to start the year as we normally would. So we're revisiting that, not just hotels and meals, but also parking, which we're being cognizant of what's going on with that. Meters will remain offline until further notice. As the board recalls from a previous meeting, you approved the actual upgrades to the meters. So those will need to take place before we turn anything on, and nothing will be turned on at this point, at least through June. So that's something certainly that, functionally is great, but has an impact on our revenues. So we're looking
Right.
at what that means for the drawdowns that we do from something like the parking account. So normally we've got operating and capital expenses coming out of that. We've got 2 police cruisers coming out of that. It pays for
Yep.
traffic and parking, pays for the parking clerk. The chief and the finance director are evaluating some tiered reductions in that particular area if they have to pay, here it's 1 cruiser instead of 2, if we're impacted significantly. So we're basically taking a little bit of a tighter look, a closer look at FY 21 based on kind of our new normal.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Any unanticipated business or any announcements?
Nothing at
Concerns?
this point.
Nothing from anyone?
No,
No,
good.
No, nice to see everybody.
yep, good to see you. Stay safe.
Likewise.
Yes, everyone stay safe. I hope everyone's family are doing well, and hope everyone's doing well, and we'll get through this.
Likewise.
It's gonna take a little while, but we'll get through it.
Mitch will keep us posted on when we'll meet next, but it could be very soon.
Right.
It could be as soon as tomorrow evening for an emergency.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Yep,
That's fine.
just let us know.
Okay.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a
So
motion to
moved.
adjourn.
So moved. All those in
Second.
favor? Oh, I gotta do roll call. Selectman Donnelly,
Aye.
Selectman George,
Aye.
Selectman Wilkinson,
Hi.
Selectman Campbell,
Aye.
and Selectman Murphy votes aye, and the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, everyone.